Today on Living by Design.
Your mission is to stop sexual exploitation. What?
Yeah, so really what our pledge to the community is that we're going to provide recovery, relief, and restoration to local victims of human trafficking.
Tony Lamont presents Living by Design with host Kathy Holloway Hill. Kathy is a strong, powerful voice. She entertains, informs, and inspires her audiences everywhere she goes.
And welcome to Living by Design. I am so thrilled about today's show, my guest, my topic, not because it excites me, but because we know that there are people in place that can stop human trafficking. And when I talk about human trafficking, that's sexual exploitation and so many other horrible things that are going on with our young people. We are here with Dave Massey. Dave, welcome to Living by Design.
Thank you for having me.
I am so thrilled that you have decided to join us and just give our viewers a snapshot into this horrible, horrible world.
Well, that's my pleasure because we also get a chance to show viewers what we're doing to stop it, right?
Excellent.
Make this world a much better place.
Excellent.
So where there is darkness, there's hope.
Amen. Now, first tell us, what is your role here at Restore, Inc.?
Yeah, well, Kathy, I'm the Chief Operating Officer. So in broad strokes, I essentially run the business that is the nonprofit corporation of Restored, Inc.
Okay.
We were founded by a woman named Tracy McDaniel. She's our CEO and she's my boss. Mm-hmm. So she both works directly with victim services as well as administers the entirety of the corporation. And I support her to some extent with loose and more broad advocacy in the marketplace, as well as making sure that we stay in compliance, run the business effectively, steward donors' funds, and have the most impact we can on our community and the girls we serve.
Excellent. Now, I know we're going to talk to one of your other employees about, dig deep into the victim situation advocacy part of it.
Yeah.
But just talk a little bit about, do you have donors who provide you with the funds you need to get this done?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, one of the most difficult things of this whole line of work is, one, what to call those that we serve, right? Which are effectively the children, specifically girls, of Indiana. But in round numbers, we tend to think of things as they're 15 to 16-year-old domestic-born girls, and we'll call them our clients. And then to some extent, our customers are those that are paying for us to serve those clients.
Okay.
So that would be the donor base, right? That could be everything from foundations to, in some cases, the government. But oftentimes it's local churches, people of faith that are breathing into this, realizing that it's a huge problem, it's a scourge on our society, and yet there are only so many people that can effectively do something about it. So they're funding us to come in and do it.
Well, you've been in business for a while, so that gives me hope that the right people are, and hopefully that's why I wanted to bring this to my show, because we're all about living by design.
Yes.
We're all about living by a purpose, meaning for your life, to do something that God intended for you to do when you were born. God didn't intend for us to just come into this world and have some type of job and make money and pay our bills and go to work the next day. What kind of purpose is in that?
Right.
I mean, it's so self-absorbed. We need to get ourselves out there to help others and see what we can do for others.
I had a high school student ask me, what's it like being the COO of a nonprofit, right? More kind of career stuff, not talking about my background, not talking about even this issue per se. And one of the things I said was, it's not so much a profession, it's more of a way of life. And I can say that with a lot of confidence. We have a small staff. It's about 5 folks. every single one of us has an origin story, and I think if you heard us talking about it, it is the same way that, say, pastors talk about having a calling.
Yes.
We all have come to a fork in the road and said, now that I know what is down this path, I cannot go anywhere but there. And I think that that's important, and I think that I think it's true of anyone who comes into contact with this issue or any issue such as, that's a justice issue or where you see victims, you see evil exploiting the innocent. Once you're aware of that and once you know what can be done about it, how can you not do something about it?
Right. So what is your mission? If you had to just tell our viewers your mission is to stop sexual exploitation. What?
Yeah. So really what our pledge to the community is that we're going to provide recovery, relief, and restoration to local victims of human trafficking. So recovery is truly the act of recovering that girl, right? So she is currently being exploited, extorted through sex trafficking or something like it. We are going to, with partnership with law enforcement, local legal system representatives, things like that.
Excellent.
We're going to go in there and, for lack of a better word, get that girl and put her into safety. And then that second piece is then we're going to offer some relief, right? So we're going to find stable housing. We're going to, sometimes when we recover them, they don't have appropriate clothing. They haven't eaten. It could be very fundamental, basic life needs. And we'll do that for anybody, any victims of human trafficking, anything that we encounter. So we may encounter an adult, we may foreign-born national. It could be boys. It could be anything. Part of then that service is to find where they do belong, right, in the large spectrum of services that are offered in our country and in our local communities. And then for those younger girls, that's really our niche, that kind of 10 to 24-year-old local girls.
10?
Yeah. Well, our youngest victims at this point that we've worked with have been around 11, and we've interviewed and assessed even younger than that. But where we've entered into relationships with them has been as young as 11. Our average age is about 15 to 16. And so for those girls, we'll enter into long-term, and when I say long-term, I mean multi-year relationships with them.
Yeah.
So, our kind of primary tactical mission is to prevent these girls from being trafficked, get them to a place of safety, and then for that population that we're really attuned, and when you talk to Whitney, she's one of those folks that is a warrior designed to help these girls in their walk. Then we're providing things like therapy or case management, even what I would consider assimilation, like if we recover them at 16 and we work in a multi-year relationship, we're helping them get to college, or maybe college isn't right, a trade or just a job, that sort of service.
Is the trafficking aspect of it more sexual in nature, or are they pulled in for other purposes?
Certainly human trafficking is basically broken down into two crimes, right? Sex trafficking and labor trafficking.
Oh,
so
gotcha.
Our niche is on the sexual exploitation and
Excellent.
sex trafficking side.
Excellent.
And
does it happen right here in this country?
Absolutely. The Department of Justice released some statistics. We saw that 83% of human trafficking victims recovered in the United States are U.S. citizens. Overwhelmingly, the population we serve are born right here in central Indiana. It is definitely an at-home, in our backyard issue, without a doubt. And we see it on the rise, too. So not only are we seeing more cases, which could be a product of us looking and working hard on this issue, but we also see in the glimpses that we have as to what the supply is. Right. The Attorney General did a study that showed from 2014 to 2016, for lack of a better word, supply of young girls quadrupled as measured on one online source. So, so there are more girls being exploited, and there's more room for that exploitation to occur. Therefore, more need for us to intervene.
Wow. Absolutely amazing. Excellent information, Dave.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. We're going to take a quick break, and we have so much more coming up because you're getting ready to dig into the real deep stuff. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us for this very powerful episode of Living by Design, because if you have a loved one, especially a young girl, you really need to listen up. We are now here with Whitney, who is our victims advocate here at Restored Inc., and we're going to talk to her about some of the really deep ins and outs of this horrible, horrible epidemic. Welcome to Living by Design, Whitney.
Thanks for having me.
I am so thrilled that we are digging into this topic. Now, on the previous segment, we spoke to Dave, and I want to kind of dig into the fact that, because we identified, I asked him, what's the difference in prostitution and trafficking? And he mentioned if there's force, fraud, or coercion, then it's considered trafficking. Versus anything outside of that, where they're getting paid or they're doing it of their own free will, they're choosing it, then that is prostitution. Is that correct?
Yes. And then also, here at Restored, we primarily work with girls who are under the age of 18, and here in the state of Indiana and federally, if a youth under the age of 18 is involved in commercial sex, then they're automatically seen as a victim of sex trafficking. So in those cases, even if there's not force, fraud, or coercion, or it's a little tougher to prove those things, then those kids are still going to get services, and other resources are going to get involved because of their age, they're automatically seen as a victim. But then when we're talking about women and men over the age of 18 that are involved in sex work, if we are unable to prove force, fraud, or coercion, or that there is someone else exploiting them, then that's when it's going to be seen as prostitution instead of as sex trafficking. Okay,
now I have been dying to ask this question. It has to be probably, well, all the questions are important, but it has to be one of the biggest. How do you discover these girls? Where is this coming from? Who's doing this, and how are they getting away with it?
Yeah, so it happens a couple different ways, especially over the last couple years, since there's been more education in communities about trafficking. We're seeing Department of Child Services is identifying people. Other youth serving organizations are identifying people as they're learning what this problem looks like. But then primarily what we're seeing is like law enforcement or is identifying them. And when they find out that they're under the age or that they've been a victim of trafficking, then that's when we, Restored, would get involved.
And so then that brings up another question. Are these girls homeless? Have they run away from home? Do they have parents? Are they just kind of out there and somebody snatches them like you may see on TV? And I want to give my viewers a very clear picture, because your baby could be a potential victim, and that's what we want to avoid. So what can we do? I mean, where are these girls? Are they homeless, or are they from everywhere, all walks of life?
So it does not discriminate. So there are girls from all levels of income and living in communities all across our state. The thing that we see least often is kidnapping. It doesn't often happen that way. Usually what happens is that there has been something that's happened in their past, like maybe they have run away. We do see that. Kids that run away are at a really high risk of being trafficked, because once they've something's probably happened at home. So things have already not been great. We see that a lot of these kids have been abused as children, that they're experiencing violence in the home, that they're experiencing substance abuse in the home. So then something's causing them to leave, and sometimes they are running from something and not to anyone, but they could meet someone in a shelter or on the street that is able to build that relationship with them, and they become kind of manipulated in to the commercial sex. Or sometimes they have met this person online, and so when they run away, they're knowing that they're going to this person. So we see that a lot. We talk a lot to parents and to other adults, and even to the girls that we work with, that about internet safety, because they are meeting people on Facebook and Instagram and other apps like Kik. And so we really talk to them about, you shouldn't be talking to people that you don't know on these sites, because that's sometimes where they're meeting these people. We don't see very often that it is a kidnapping situation because unfortunately there's all these other vulnerabilities that have added up to make it where it's unfortunately it's easy sometimes for this person to get them to start doing this, or they have this relationship with them and then they're able to force them into the sex work. And so there's really they're not just grabbing kids off the street because they have all these kids that are vulnerable that unfortunately become easy targets for them.
And it's very important that we know these facts because I think a lot of parents and a lot of caregivers, grandparents, or whoever's raising the child may feel like, oh, my child is fine because, you know, I watch after her. She's not going to be kidnapped. But that's the least of how these girls get into it. So that's not even an issue. The issue is the relationship that they may have with a trusted person, that if they are dealing with a situation that is difficult for them, or maybe they're addicts. Maybe they're dealing with sexual addiction themselves. And, you know, they don't know what to do. So they leave to try to go find the drug of choice. And that could cause them to be a victim, perhaps, maybe.
Yeah, substance abuse definitely plays a big role. We have, I mean, most people know that here in Indiana we're having a pretty serious drug crisis over the last couple of years. And so that definitely plays a role, that people are exchanging sex for drugs, whether they are the person trying to get drugs or they're being forced by someone else to do that. We unfortunately see that it's not always this other person that comes into this child's life and then is the trafficker, but sometimes we're even seeing that family members are their trafficker, and especially in those familial situations, drugs play a really big role in that.
I'm sorry, I don't like to interrupt my guests, but I have to. So family members can be the trafficker?
Yes, we've seen cases in Indiana and across the country in the last couple of years where it's parents, aunts, uncles, people that are closest to the kids that are sometimes the ones that are trafficking them.
Oh man, I'm almost speechless.
Those cases are really tough because those are sometimes the person that...
It's their guardian.
Yep. Even when your parent has hurt you, you have that innate need in you to have a relationship with that person. And so those cases are really tough because it's really hard for kids to deal with that and then reconcile what their life looks like to have a relationship or not have a relationship with that person, you know, later down the road. So those are definitely some of the toughest cases.
Absolutely. Unreal. We have got to start protecting our children, which is why I wanted to bring this to the forefront so our viewers can know what to look for. You know, now for the guardians who are doing it, I don't really know even how to get started. That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, it's there's so much with poverty and substance abuse.
Right.
Yeah.
They'll do anything. They'll sell their own child to get drugs. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back because there's so much more that I want you to know about this topic. Stay right where you are. Welcome back to Living by Design, and we are still here with Whitney, and we're going to just continue the conversation because there's so many elements to this horrible epidemic that we all need to know. Let's talk a little bit. You mentioned in the previous segment something about social media. Now, we know social media, in my opinion, it's a little bit out of control. There are some parents that, and parents, I am not criticizing you. Please don't take this statement that way. But there are some parents that are giving their 10, 11, 12-year-olds devices that they can use. Now, I understand that they may have to have a phone for emergency purposes. Then set it up that way. Block all access to any of these social media websites so they can't get to them. And then all they have is access to a cell phone, a telephone. I know that can be done because I'm a technology person. So talk about social media and the impact and terrible influence that it has on this situation.
Yeah, so social media and the internet can be so great for kids and for adults, but also there are just so many dangers with it. And so what we're seeing a lot is that traffickers are actually looking for certain types of like posts that people are sharing where they are talking about how things aren't great at home and different things like that, and they are preying particularly on kids that kind of seem like they would be willing to run away, or that they do have some of those vulnerabilities that are going on. And so then they are, if the kids don't have proper privacy settings on their social media, then they are able to really talk to anyone, anywhere in the world, really.
That's right.
And so they start talking to people that they don't know that could be lying about who they are, or maybe they aren't, and they're just, comfortable talking to someone that's quite a bit older than them. And so we're seeing that if there aren't proper privacy settings on kids' social media, that they're able to talk to people that they probably shouldn't be talking to. So what we really encourage parents is that we're not saying that your kid shouldn't have any of these things,
right,
but we don't think that your kid necessarily deserves privacy on the internet. That's a question that even my own parents have asked me, because I have younger siblings, and they ask, well, like, how much privacy should they have on the internet? And I say, if they're a teenager or a kid, then none. Like, you need to know what the passwords to your kids' accounts. You need to be able to see the things that they're posting, be able to check their privacy settings. And if you see changes in their behavior and you suspect that something's going on, then you're going to want to look into those things. And social media is definitely one of those places to look to see who they're talking to, what kind of posts they're looking at, what kind of things they've been posting.
And I know there may be a lot of parents, I'm going to talk directly to you right now, guardians, grandparents, whoever is raising a child. If you don't understand the technical aspects of how to find the privacy settings and all of that, there are help menus in all of these social media sites. Google it. How do you set your privacy settings for this social media, Facebook or Snapchat or Kicks or whatever? There's tons of them out there. So if you don't know how to do it, look it up. Look it up.
Yeah.
There's many ways it can be done.
Right.
So now, I was just thinking about this as we were sitting here talking. Social media is huge. What about, well, first of all, I know the age range from how this can happen starts very, very young. Go ahead and share that with our viewers.
Yeah, so if we're talking about cases that I've read about from across the country, there are kids that are, very, very young. Some of the cases here in Indiana that have been pretty young, we've had cases where kids were 9, 10, 11 years old.
Absolutely
so it's happening
amazing.
Very young. But I would say on average, really what we're seeing, especially with the sex trafficking of youth, we're seeing the average age is somewhere around 16. So we're working with a lot of girls that are in high school, that are around 16, 17 years old.
And that's about the age, well, I think it's a little younger than that, when low self-esteem sets in for whatever reason, because I'm not big enough, I'm not small enough, I'm not tall enough, I'm not this, and I'm not it's, I like to call my show nutritional TV, but there's so much junk food television out there that it just gets in our children's and especially our young girls' heads, and it makes them feel like, I need to be validated. I need to be appreciated. I need to be shown that I'm loved. And I was sitting here thinking, I was, getting back to this, what I was saying a few minutes ago, is that it might be also dating websites. Do you think
we've seen that a little bit?
A little bit, okay,
definitely.
but not that much.
No,
that's good.
It's not as often as some of the other social media that we're seeing, but dating websites as well. Some of those dating apps, we're seeing some of that going on. I haven't personally encountered any cases like that, but there's definitely news stories about that. But with the self-esteem thing, one of the things I talk about a lot when I'm out presenting is that I had 2 parents. I grew up in church. I had a very healthy life in a lot of aspects, and I remember how hard it was to be a teenager.
Exactly.
And so I remind people, like, when you were a teenager, no matter how good your life was, it's hard. It's hard to make friends. We're not very nice to each other at those ages. And so especially for these kids that have these other vulnerabilities and they're not getting support from their parents or from other people in their lives, that continues to add on to these vulnerabilities. Because sometimes, I mean, it's, you know, maybe looking back, we don't feel this way, but when you're a teenager, it's hard to be a teenager. And when you have these other things going against you, that continues to add on to their vulnerabilities to being trafficked.
All got to be involved. Now, Whitney, could you please give our viewers all the contact information? What is your website first? Let me ask you, what is the website?
So our website is restoredinc.org.
Okay.
And you can also, if you want to learn more, you can find us there, or you can also find us on Facebook.
Okay.
That's really where we post a lot of what's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's usually the best way. If you want to find out more or get connected to us, then you can do that through the website or through Facebook by sending an email through the website or a message on Facebook.
And if there is a young girl who finds herself out there and she's like, oh my goodness, what should I do? Is there a hotline that they can call?
Yes, there is a National Human Trafficking hotline, and you can call it or text it. If you call, it's 1-888-373-7888. Or you can also text help or whatever's going on to be free.
Awesome. You have just been amazing. I thank you and Dave Massey so very much for sharing all of this very valuable information. I hope our show today has impacted you and also given you the tools, the knowledge, and the information so that you can save the life of your loved one. We thank you for joining us for this episode, and we'll see you next week.